Honourable Member to Uraroa Flavel. Tēnā koe, Mr. Flavel.
Mr. Speaker, kia ora tātou katoa. Mr. Speaker, I'd have to say I'm sort of standing in the middle of the field here, listening to the Honourable Heather Roy. Get it? In the middle of the field. Anyway, I digress. Mr. Speaker, on one hand, sort of having that sense of real pride around the events and the opening ceremony, because I was there with a number of colleagues, and on the other hand, also experiencing the other side that have been of the issues that have been well documented, because right in that little group of parliamentarians in the New Zealand rugby parliamentary team that won the World Cup, I might add, we had a cross range of events that happened. For example, I arrived early. I got there on public transport, on private transport, straight into the game, no problem. Crowd was great, and yet all of my colleagues rolled in at various times, coming in on public transport, telling me about their stories. Some missed the start of the opening; they were pretty brassed off, I'd have to say, and some even missed the start of the game, and they were worse. So across the length and breadth of that Friday evening, we had the full range of things that one could actually think about in terms of this particular debate. But the one thing that really worries me about this whole debate, and it's not to get into whether the minister should or shouldn't, it is the issue of public safety, Mr. Speaker. And if it is an issue of public safety, then I reckon we've got to do everything we can to make sure that that's dealt with. I've got to say, sir, that there were some warnings. I can report that in my first reading speech, and looking back, it was the 22nd of June of this year. I spoke about three key things. The first one was a problem by one person being basically, namely the minister, making all the decisions over matters pertaining to the World Cup. That was problem number one. The second issue I suggested was the issue of the involvement of the Minister of Māori Affairs on the Rugby World Cup Authority. I thought that was quite important. And the third issue that I spoke about was alcohol consumption. Three issues, and I've got to say there were some warning signs there right from the very start. And following up from that, my colleague Rahui Kātene on the 17th of November last year, she said these words, sir, I thought they're quite important, that's why I sort of pulled them up. She says, quote, "We have been keen to ensure appropriate management to avoid public disturbances or mass arrests from the specific liquor licensing requirements." She carries on, "And I do have to raise a concern that we might be placing so much emphasis on liquor licensing to allow people the opportunity to become inebriated while watching the rugby, whereas for a significant sector of our population, simply getting to the game itself will be an issue." So, sir, she carried on, sorry. "Alcohol is already playing too prominent a role in the World Cup, and the Minister for the Rugby World Cup has too much power under the bill." So that's what my colleague Rahui Kātene said. And lo and behold, here we are today, just after the start of the World Cup, and pretty much most of those issues have come to pass. So I reckon we sort of got it right. In reflecting on this, the key concern that I had, sir, around public safety, clearly not a good idea having a lot of people in a small space with alcohol. And we know that the various reports about delays, the aggression of some people spilling out into the crowds, hundreds of people on stalled trains, crowds packed in like sort of sardines. There was an element there that could have caused some serious chaos. And for all intents and purposes, all of us agree the scale was just huge, it was immense. In fact, Mr. Jones, Shane Jones, was talking about it yesterday in Māori Affairs. And he reckoned it just needed something to spark that could have turned that whole environment into something pretty dangerous. And having been down to the cloud, sir, one little piddly little iron fence on the side of the water may not have saved some from going in there. But they also talked about some technical difficulties they had with some big screens further up Queen Street, I believe, or Key Street. And that contributed also to people sort of massing down at the waterfront. Technical delays, transport delays, alcohol misuse, and of course the one that's come into the light more recently is around the issue of some of our waka paddlers also being assaulted and abused. Again, they recount it was alcohol at the heart of it. We had this awesome scene of 20 waka coming down the Waitemata Harbour, berthing there, and our paddlers getting out. and doing a haka, trying to get back to where they came from. And lo and behold, we got some crazies who are alcohol-fueled, decide that a little bit of, to take out, for whatever reason, they wanted to take certain feathers and also get in the road of our people. And so young girls were assaulted and all of that. Bottles were thrown. The paddlers were physically and verbally abused, simply from walking from point A to B. Hair was pulled, a taonga taken, and even some were questioning why the carriers, the waka hoi people, didn't hold their waka up high. Instead, they held them down the sides as a form of protection for those people involved there, especially the young people. I mean, I was pretty sad and brassed off actually to read the account from a 14-year-old girl who attends Te Kura Kaupapa Māori, or Pua Te Moana Nui Ākiwa. Her name is Binnie McGee Repia. Binnie's memory of the grand opening of the Rugby World Cup, sir, was getting pushed back, hit on the head, and eventually leading to a CAT scan, which was investigating possible head injury. One other girl suffered from shock, and another girl ended up with broken ribs. Now, all of this is not a good look, and it sort of soured the occasion, really, because it was such a good day. I've got to say that the other unfortunate aspect was to this particular situation about Kaihoi was that despite calls for help to the police and to the security people, or to indeed the general public, there was no attempts to actually intervene. And indeed, that this is the account. This is the minister says this is not true, but what I'm saying is this is the account from some people to us that the general public didn't help out, and so that's a disappointment which we hope will be addressed into the future. So, in talking about dealing with what could have been a catastrophe, a number of people did turn up at Auckland Hospital, and we did get a call from a gentleman by the name of, or at least there was a letter to the editor on Tuesday from a gentleman, Les Gola, who is an intensive care specialist at Auckland City Hospital. And it was his assessment that Friday's opening celebrations could have easily turned to tragedy because of the large crowds, the cramped conditions, and limited access and escape routes. Because he did report that the hospital was just basically overloaded with drunk and injured revellers on Friday, and that ambulances actually had to take patients to other hospitals. So, against all that, sir, on the positive side, we had Precious Clark with the sound of the karanga to open the Rugby World Cup. We had the Pacific Island dancers and drummers. We had, of course, the Te Arawa Kapahaka, Te Mataora, Yorehu. The ceremony, as I say, was awesome. And also we had Ria Hall, who sang the song from Tauranga, but lives in Wellington. And I'll send a special message to her to say she was awesome. So there were some great things there, the fireworks, all that sort of stuff. And of course, the moment with Jonah Lomu walking hand in hand with the young boy from Canterbury, that was pretty powerful in itself. It was a great occasion to be at, and we hope that, in fact, that the positiveness actually takes over from all of the negativity that we've had to run through. In the end, sir, I think it's important that we've got to consider where do we go to from here. Well, we welcome the news that the Auckland City Council will compensate for the Friday night's fiasco by rewarding affected fans with tickets to the semi-finals. But we really would like to talk about crowd control as opposed to compensation. Our collective efforts must be given to ensuring Party Central on Queen's Wharf is well managed to avoid more Rugby World Cup crowd chaos. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that we do get it right. The things are tracking along, as other speakers have said, quite well, with the games being managed pretty effectively, and the test may come this weekend. I do want to reflect on, I suppose, the reaction from the Mayor of Auckland, Len Brown, who urged us all, I think, to keep calm and to carry on. And in that regard, he's probably set the scene for what we need to do. If these measures that have been contemplated today are about taking us through to having a positive end to the Rugby World Cup, then then we should, in fact, get right behind it and ensure that at the end of it, public safety is dealt with and taken care of, but that everybody has a good time while we're at it. Kia ora tātou.
I acknowledge the honourable member